This really could not be a more volatile or tense time in that region.
Battle rages on the ground between Israel and Hamas.
1,300 by gunfire at
by saying that Palestinian women.
Gaza violence.
Casualties.
Military support. Blaming victims.
In a region of the world that's torn by centuries of conflict, oppression, and turmoil, a tiny modern state with ancient roots shines as a beacon of hope against all odds. The nation of Israel is an oasis of democracy and stability, and it's curbed terrorism for decades by battling evil and holding true to its values. America shares these values and must support Israel to maintain peace in the region and Israel's freedom in order for it to remain in its own land.
America-Israel relations is the strongest diplomatic relations ever. The piece of land that belongs to the Jewish people, belongs to the only democratic system in this region. I think that what makes it so strong is actually the fact we have mutual values.
We value truth, we value justice, we value democracy. These are basic pillars that our two countries share, and as a result, we not only have a shared past and a shared present, we also have a shared future.
The purpose of this documentary isn't to show the world that Israel should exist or have its own land and culture and so forth. We're past that. This film will endeavor to educate Americans and others that we must stand with Israel in its fight against evil and its pursuit of peace for the world. Join with Oculi Entertainment and executive producer Denise Hopkins to help bring this all-important message to America and to the entire world.
Israel has more scientists and tech professionals than any other nation in the world.
Israel produces 450 million cubic meters of drinkable water a day. The technology is now used in more than 40 countries around the world.
So you have this really unusual and unique link between our countries because there's no other country in the world that can say they've given humanity the things that Israel, the Jewish state, has given us.
It's an attachment that is ideological, that is theological, that is emotional. The founders of the United States said America is the second Israel.
Sure.
Okay, I'm Dr. Anthony Harper with InterMountain Christian News and Christian Newspaper Association, and in light of the President in support of pulling out of UNESCO, what would the President's response, to UNRWA defunding, which is a UN agency that has been in the schools, specifically inciting kids to violence against the Jews, and our tax dollars going into that? Do you have any statement about, in light of UNESCO pulling out, about UNRWA?
No, I mean, I'm not as familiar probably as I should be with it. I would just offer that the responsible way to look at any program, and certainly when I went to DHS, and I did this in Iraq and other places I've been, when we're spending U.S. taxpayer money, we should look at every program and decide whether it is being successful. If it's not being successful, then change it so it can be successful, or sometimes you just say it's not going to work. Go ahead.
Follow up to that would be, the Prime Minister just came out today. There was a release, the government press office in Israel. The Prime Minister welcomed the withdrawal from UNESCO, and I had met with the Prime Minister of Israel in May about the UNRWA issue. He's very concerned. He made a statement in Jerusalem Post not too long ago in denouncing UNRWA, so I thought it would be...
I'd have to get more familiar, sorry.
General. I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here. It's a very historic time in Jerusalem. The opening of the U.S. Embassy here, like I said, very historic in light of the number 70. It was in the year AD 70 that the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple here. Now it's 70 years of independence for Israel, and Israel is now more powerful than Rome. Earlier in the week, I was at the Colosseum, in the Roman Colosseum, to talk about the helplessness of the Jews in Masada when the Roman army was advancing. Here we have a very historic time, 70 years, President Trump announcing to the world that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel and establishing the opening of the U.S. Embassy here in Jerusalem in the Arnona neighborhood. A very blessed time for the meeting. Here we're going to be starting here very soon the formal ceremony. And for Christians around the world are so very excited. I know that they are praying about this event for this day and for everyone in Israel. A blessing to be here in this historic time. Yes, I'm Anthony Harper, InterMountain Christian News, and also the Christian Newspaper Association. Not many of you may understand about in the election in the U.S. that the Christian vote turnout was significant in Trump's win. And the key issue for a lot of Christian voters in America has been, I wanted to share our Christian support for Israel. Many Christians in America praying for Israel and praying for you, Mr. Prime Minister, and for all the leadership here. There was a key scripture in the Old Testament that led up to this big Christian voter turnout in 2 Chronicles 7:14. Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, traveled to 50 states in the nation and called the church voters to prayer and repentance. And those voters in America believe the solution to terrorism is found in your Tanakh, the 2 Chronicles 7:14. What would you share with the Christian voters in America that turned out in large numbers, about 80% of the evangelical vote, that put Trump in his position, and the Christian media that gave Trump this opportunity?
I appreciate deeply the support we have from Christian friends around the world. In the United States, North America, South America, that's a developing situation. Interesting one. Europe, Africa. I visited 4 countries and I was astounded by the degree of empathy for what they said. They said the children of Israel. You represent the children of Israel. That tells you something. And the same thing we're finding now in Asia and in unlikely places. So we deeply appreciate the constancy of that support and the expansion of that support. I have to say at the same time that we're interested in broad support. In the United States, obviously bipartisan support has been an anchor of the tremendous support that Israel has. The most important alliance we have was and will be with the United States of America. So I thank you for that support. And you said, what is my message in fighting terror? I'll tell you what my message is.
Okay.
My message is actually from Joshua. It said, be strong and of good courage. That's how you fight this thing. The most elementary thing is strength and courage. Strength is not enough, but courage is the most important quality because it guarantees, I think the Romans said this, courage is not the only quality, but it guarantees the others. Because if you don't have courage, everything else is meaningless. You have to have great courage and determination to fight this evil, and I think that we can defeat it.
I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here with the InterMountain Christian Newspaper and the Christian Newspaper Association. Blessed to be here today at the White House with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. We'll be talking about President Trump's recent trip to Israel, and it's great to have you join me here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So if you could share with our listeners kind of a highlight, what happened on President Trump's trip to Israel there.
It was an incredible trip, I think, incredibly historic, given that he met with both the president and prime minister while we were there, but also a big part of his trip was meeting with making stops in all of the biggest religious kind of locations around the globe, starting in Saudi Arabia, then to Israel, and then on to Rome. It was, again, I think both historical and very spiritual for a lot of people.
Okay, and I know one of the stops was at the Western Wall.
It was, and I think anybody that saw the visuals saw how moving that was, and certainly, again, very historic, given that no president has ever been to the Western Wall and participated in that setting.
Okay, I was there at the arrival at the airport. You were there, I'm assuming, as well.
I was, yes, sir.
Yeah, and the president of Israel was there.
He was, and including the majority, I think all of the cabinet from the Israeli government was there as well. A huge sign of respect, but I think even bigger than that, it was a sign of the unbreakable bond that we have between the United States and Israel, and it shows the importance that the president has placed on that relationship, continuing to develop that and continuing to show how important our relationship with him is.
You know, as you're aware, President Trump was talking about the violence issues, and he was there in Saudi Arabia as well. There was this global peace. There was a dedication. There was a building that he was at. Do you know anything about his time at the Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, again, this was a monumental moment, I think, not just for this trip, but in his presidency, to bring the leaders of so many different countries together, Muslim-dominated countries in that region. I think there were over 55 leaders from around that area that came to talk specifically about combating terrorism, combating ISIS, and actually getting a little bit of skin in the game and taking that burden on within the members of that region. It was a really big moment, again, not just for the trip, but I think that will be part of the legacy of the president.
A lot of people have been wondering how does reduce this violence. I know President Trump talked about that this violence needs to stop, with this extremism. So what's his plan for this agreement, working with us, stopping this violence?
I think that it's multifaceted. You have to cut off the funding source, which is a big priority of the group that met in Saudi Arabia. It's putting an emphasis on looking at targeting them through digital and social platforms. And again, he's working with all members of the intelligence community, from the Homeland Security Department as well as many others from our side, to figure out the best ways to combat that. Those are some of the early ways that I know this group is focused on, is cutting off funding sources and looking at other ways to find them through different social media platforms.
Well, very disturbing what's happening there, and hopefully we can get peace, get more peace there. And a lot of Israeli people are concerned about this. And the president of Israel, when I was there at the airport, he was talking about, he referenced Muslims, Christians, and Jews. We have different beliefs, but yet we all worship the same God. And I know that he was trying to be political and trying to unite people, but there was a lot of emotion in that. So
yeah, I think anytime you're talking about the sanctity of life, which is basically what this is. I mean, people are literally fighting for survival, particularly in that region.
Right.
And it's hard for that not to be an emotional and moving moment. And I think that's one of the reasons that President Trump has placed such a high priority on national security and defeating ISIS, and making that probably one of the key points of his administration, is fighting that.
I guess the final thing would be the embassy issue. There was a lot of talk about, when he was in Israel, about moving the embassy, and of course recently that he has signed something about kind of a delay in this. In the press meetings, we're talking about that he was going to fulfill the campaign promise. What is the status for the embassy issue? Are you able to comment on that?
As the president said in the statement, it's not a matter of if, but when. And right now he's trying to work through the peace process, and is still very much plans to do that, but wants to work through this process first before we take those steps.
Well, I sure appreciate your help.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you for joining us today. Okay, Haskell, thank you for joining me.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming here to Israel to celebrate together the new opening of the embassy.
Well, thank you. And along with that, I have some questions to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why is the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem important?
Look, for the Jews, Jerusalem has always been its capital. The Jerusalem is not just the democratic capital of Israel, of the Jewish people. This has been the center of our culture, the center of our history, the center of our religion, of our tradition for thousands of years. Whether we were here or we were chased out of Israel, persecuted in different countries, Jerusalem was always the center of our identity. It was always a flag of hope for us to survive so many atrocities that have happened to the Jewish people. And so when we are able to found again the state of Israel and declare Israel's capital, Jerusalem, this was something that we've been longing for thousands of years. This has been a moment where it's been confirmed for us as a Jewish people that this is a physical center of our identity as well. Now, the world, a lot of the times have ignored that. And we had a complex relationship with the international community for thousands of years. We know of many persecution that have happened towards Jews, racism, and everything. I think the recognition of the United States to have Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, moving the embassy, the center of the diplomatic activity here to the city of Jerusalem, finally gives us the feeling, and we're really grateful for it, but it's really the feeling that someone from the international community recognized the fact that Jerusalem is inseparable from the Jewish identity, from Israel's identity, from Israelis' identity. And so this confirmation gave us such joy and strength, and really reconciliate also a lot of the things that the international community have done throughout the years. And that's why every country that is following up now, the United States of America, is such a blessing for us to have more and more countries recognizing that fact.
Okay, and along with this, what does the move of the U.S. Embassy signify?
What it signify? Exactly that. I mean, the fact that they recognize that the America is recognizing one of the most powerful countries, one of the leaders of the free world, recognizing Jerusalem as part of the Jewish identity. Give a great confirmation and comfort for us as well. Having, being through so many difficult period of time through history. Second World War trying to be eliminated, Spanish Inquisition, persecution in different countries. Time after time, Jews have been persecuted, trying to be eliminated. And now this is a recognition, yes, Jerusalem is part of the Jewish history. Jerusalem is part of every Jewish identity. When we recognize Jerusalem in our weddings, bar mitzvahs, 3 times a day when we pray, it's part of our religion. It's one of the most sacred it is the most sacred place for our religion. It's part of our traditions. And so recognizing that this is the significance of it, this is finally touching the Jewish souls and telling them it's okay. We're here beside you. We're backing you up.
Okay. And what is special about the U.S. and Israeli nation's relationship?
What is so special? I think we can see that. I think that, first of all, it's the mutual values that the United States share with Israel. The United States is the biggest defender of liberties, of freedom, and bring hope to so many countries by defending those values. And here in Israel, Israel is this flag of hope in our region, where you just need to step outside of our border to any countries around the Middle East, understanding that those liberties are jeopardized every single day. Minorities are persecuted. Christians are the most persecuted minorities in the Middle East. And so having Israel as this flag of hope this flag of freedom, of liberties, is something that we share with the United States as well. I think this bond has created such a special friendship between the two countries as well, and we can see that really flourishing and coming to new records heights during this terms of President Trump as well.
Okay. And did you ever think that the move...
Sorry, one step, please.
Okay. Did you ever think that this move of the embassy would come?
Well, I think you can see here I've got Trump's Time magazine before he was elected as well. And I had great hopes for this presidency. I was happy when he was elected. I believe he's a man of his word, and he proved I was right, and most of the people who elected him were right in their choices as well. Throughout these entire years, also through his campaign, the media have broadcasted and told people that what he's saying is absolutely wrong. He cannot do anything that he says he's going to do. He cannot declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He cannot move the embassy of the United States to Jerusalem. He cannot pull out of the Iranian nuclear deal. He cannot deal with the North Korean nuclear crisis. They called him a fireman. Someone who's trying to ignite the entire area. Well, you know what? They were wrong. They were wrong with the embassy. They were wrong with the declaration of Jerusalem. They were wrong with the North Korea. They were wrong with the Iranian deal. And so you know what? If you would hire those reporters in your firm or in your company, and time after time they'll have false prediction, there's something wrong. Most people would probably fire them, or they'll just tell them, you know what, don't try to be a prophet. Don't try to predict the future. Just talk about what's happening now. And what's happening now are incredible news for the United States, for its foreign policy. It's being respected all around the world. And I think, there's a lot of successful achievement that President Trump has achieved during this term.
But along with this, though, I recently heard, I was reading in a news report about the idea of a Palestinian embassy being in another neighborhood of Jerusalem, and the concern, I know, for a lot of Christians in America is that there should be no two-state idea ever talking about dividing Jerusalem or Israel. And so, have you heard, or do you have any comment about the idea that there might be, that President Trump might support a Palestinian state? Because I heard the Vice President of the Knesset, when he was here in January, talk about, we will support a two-state solution if you and the Palestinians agree. But a lot of Christians are upset about that idea. And there's a prophet, Joel, in the Tanakh that warns people about dividing Israel, the land. That specifically it says God enters into judgment in the valley of Jehoshaphat, the nations that divided his land. And I was wondering if you had an opinion about this.
Okay. I think that throughout history, no matter who was president, they've tried to come to an agreement between Israelis and Palestinians. Time after time, Palestinians stood up and walked away from the negotiating table, refused to come to any kind of agreement. And I think that's kind of a proof as well that President Trump will not follow the same mistake. We trust the Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump to come and try and resolve and try and figure out a long-lasting, stable solution in our region. We trust both of them to look after Israel's interests of security and security needs of the Israeli people here in Israel as well. And so I do think that coming to a two-state solution, definitely the way it's been talked about until now, I don't believe that this is on the table. I don't think it's achievable, and I think Trump is a very much a reality, straight on the table type of person. And when he understands this cannot happen in our reality, they'll go through a different kind of position or a different kind of solution.
Yes. Well, a lot of people don't trust the media in general. And so this news report to be fake news that President Trump would talk about, expelling Jews from a certain neighborhoods and make room for a Palestinian embassy, which a lot of Christians are hoping that is not true.
Yeah, I think that if that was his plan, we would have heard it a long time ago. Okay. I don't believe this is his intention. I would be careful with what we're getting from media and the news channels these days.
Okay, so how do you think this move of the embassy came so quickly?
Well, I think that the President of the United States have a great team surrounding him, giving him good counsel and good advice. As you know, most president probably would have taken years and years until it would have happened. But we know this president, he's a bit more of a businessman and a politician. So there's less talking and more actions. And obviously, as businessmen as well, when you want something done, you get it done as quickly as possible. And I think that with this attitude and having such an amazing team around him that is very capable, like Ambassador Friedman, that is here working in close cooperation, daily cooperation with him. Obviously, Greenblatt, he's advisor on the Middle East issue, and obviously Jared Kushner, who is very knowledgeable about what's happening here in Israel, about the history and everything. I think that this team makes a great team to the Middle East, and I think that together with this kind of attitude, they are able to achieve much more than any other administration would have been able to achieve.
And next, what can we expect in the future relationship between the U.S. and Israel?
What can we expect in the future? Well, as we see it's continuing to incline constantly, I'm sure great things are coming. I think that the special friendship that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have are coming and creating a great kind of attitude towards foreign affairs and through the international community as well. And so, we can probably expect great things. Hopefully, President Trump will be able to secure, with the North Korean an agreement as well. Hopefully as well, pulling out of the Iran agreement will lift back the sanctions on Iran, and they will understand that they have no other choice but to completely neglect and give up their nuclear program and start concentrating on more constructive things.
That would be good. And then finally, what one thing would you like to tell the people of Israel or the U.S.?
Well, I would like to tell the Christian community in the United States that the Jewish people here in Israel are really grateful for all of their support, love, and prayer to Israel and to Israelis. This support is not taken for granted, and we do know that the evangelical votes and the Christian votes are what not just voted Trump into this administration, but also create a huge and massive, beautiful effect about the Israeli and the United States relationships and friendship, and that we're extremely grateful for that. These are great weeks for our friendships. We see this getting stronger and stronger, this strong bond that we've had for many, many years, and we're continuing to grow. And so, please send a big thank you to all the Christian community.
Thank you, MK Haskell.
It is a pleasure.
For joining me.
Thank you very much.
Blessed with the MK Sharon Haskell today.
גם בארצות הברית התקיימה אתמול שעת שאלות של עיתונאים במסגרת תדריך של דובר הבית הלבן. בין השמות שעלו שם היו גם שמותיהם של כמה חברי כנסת ישראלים. הנה.
Israel leaders in the Knesset, I'm aware of, are concerned about the misuse of U.S. tax dollars going to UN schools that are inciting kids to violence against the Jews. MK leaders Sharon Haskell, Yehuda Glick, and Dr. Eliza Levy, I met recently, had interviews with them. Their concerns are very serious, so also want they would want to know what President Trump, how he would respond to the misuse of these.
Well, I think I would go back to what I said to John a minute ago, which is that I think he has tremendous respect for how tax dollars are spent. But then I would mention again, I mean, we need a UN ambassador. We need a Secretary of State. There's a lot of these things that can start to happen under the direction of the new leadership that's being held up right now.
מצטרף אלינו עכשיו חבר הכנסת יהודה גליק, שלום לך.
שלום לך דנה, ערב טוב, יום של הארת פנים לכל הצופים.
תשמע, אתה כיכבת בתדריך של דובר הבית הלבן, ספר לנו על כך.
תשמעי, אני מוכרח להגיד שיש דברים הרבה יותר משמחים בחיים. יצאתי הבוקר, ראיתי את השמש זורחת, יש ילדים שלי בריאים, ודברים הרבה יותר משמחים מאשר להופיע במסיבת עיתונאים של הדובר של טראמפ, אבל בכל זאת אין ספק שאנחנו העלינו נושא והצפנו אותו בכנסת פעם אחר פעם, ואני שמח שעכשיו הוא הגיע גם בזכות אותה פעילות שלנו בכנסת לבית הלבן, וזה מדובר על בתי ספר של אונר"א, שזה כספים שמגיעים מכל העולם לאום, שבמקום שהם ישמשו לטפל בפליטים וליישב סכסוכים, ספרי הלימוד בכל בתי ספר של אונר"א מכילים שנאה, הסתה, באמת דמוניזציה של ישראל. אני מדבר על ספרי הלימוד כולם, אפילו בספרי המתמטיקה והטבע. הכל מלא 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 בחומרים מסיתים, וכל זה ממומן על ידי כספי משלם המיסים האמריקאי, כמו גם משלם המיסים בכל רחבי אירופה. ואנחנו את הנושא הזה הצפנו, גם במפגש שאני עשיתי לפני כחודשיים עם קבוצה של כ-30 עיתונאים מרחבי העולם, וגם בכינוס שעשתה חברת הכנסת עליזה לביא לפני כחודש, בדיוק שוב להציף את הנושא. ואני שמח שאחד העיתונאים שהיה באותם מפגשים הגיע גם לדובר הבית הלבן ושאל את השאלה, ונדמה לי שהתשובה שהוא קיבל הייתה בהחלט ראויה, שהנשיא חשוב לו כל דולר אמריקאי, במיוחד שהולך לחול, והוא יעקוב אחרי זה. אז אני מאוד מקווה שזה אכן מה שיקרה.
נאחל לך שתמשיך לככב בתדריכי הבית הלבן.
אני מעדיף, מקווה שהעניין ייפטר, זה הרבה יותר חשוב, ושבאמת כל ילד פלסטיני יקבל את מה שמגיע לו, חינוך טוב, סיכוי טוב כדי להצליח, ולא שיוכל בבית הספר שנאה והסתה ויגדל להיות אדם שכל כולו אויב ושונא.
בהחלט, תודה רבה לך.